BBC Sussex with Jane Vickers.
Well, back to that top story on our breakfast show today. Picket lines are forming across Sussex as public sector workers strike over plans to change their pensions. Teachers, UK border agency staff at Gatwick Airport, non-emergency hospital workers and council employees are among those taking part in a national day of industrial action. 2 million people across the country are supposed to be taking part in this, are expected to take part. Earlier, our reporter Katie Inman updated us from the picket line outside Brighton's Royal Sussex County Hospital.
Unison and GMB trade union members started arriving here about half an hour ago. There's about 10 members outside the hospital already. Now, they've been busy this morning putting up flags. At the last count, I could see about 20 flags. It's starting to look a little bit like a festival, actually, and posters as well. Now, the posters say that everyone deserves a fair pension and also our NHS, our future. Can you just give us an idea of the types of your members who'll be striking here today? What kind of jobs do they do?
We've got people who are working in the midwifery unit, we've got healthcare assistants, and we've got staff employed by Sussex His who provide the IT service for the NHS in Sussex.
Now, why are you striking today?
I'm very concerned about having to pay more for their pension, work longer up until the age of 68, and when they get their pension, a lot less.
Katie Inman outside the hospital, Royal Sussex County Hospital this morning. Baz in Hastings has texted in to say, I agree with the strikers. If you paid money weekly into a bank and when you drew it out there was only a quarter left, you'd complain. That is what it's like for the strikers. Why should the government take pension money to boost their coffers? Thank you very much for that. You can get in touch and let me know your thoughts on this. Let's try and understand a little bit more about what the issue is about today. Jennie Kreser, partner and head of pensions at Silverman, Sherliker in the city, joins us now. Thanks very much for joining us, Jennie. You've got a bit of a tough task here because I'm sure a lot of people are a little bit confused about both sides to this argument. Just try and explain why there's industrial action today and what they're actually fighting over.
Okay, morning, Jane. Cast your mind back about 18 months and the infamous "there's no money left" note left on the minister's desk. The things that we knew is that there was a large hole in the economic coffers. And the other thing that we knew, and this is actually quite good news, is that we're all living a lot longer. So the government decided that they needed to have a review of public sector pensions, and they asked a former Labour minister, Lord Hutton, John Hutton as was, to have a look at the whole question of public sector pensions and how some money could possibly be saved. And he came up with various recommendations earlier this year, including the fact that contributions may need to go up for certain people, that people would have to work a bit longer because we're living longer before they get their pension. And he also made a few suggestions about how pensions should increase and at what rate. And this is the infamous, perhaps, CPI measure of inflation as against using RPI. So along came these suggestions, and then the government had to decide what they were going to do with these suggestions, and the proposals were then clarified, and the negotiations with the unions, of course, quite rightly began. And the union's main concern was that their members were going to have to work longer. Some of their members were going to have to work longer before they were able to get their pension, and that contributions might have to increase. Now, the interesting thing about contributions, and this is where it all gets quite confusing, nothing about pensions is simple, I'm afraid.
No, I know it isn't.
Is that most public sector schemes are what are called unfunded. So the contributions that people pay actually kind of go into general coffers. They don't actually get set aside in order to provide an actual pension at the end of the day. The exception is the local government pension scheme, which is a funded scheme, and so the contributions do have a bearing on the pension that you get at the end of the day.
So this is, I mean, I know that the unions are basically saying they don't want to make these contributions, but what you're saying then is that the government effectively haven't reserved, or just the way public pensions are set up, they're not reserved in a safe box, so to speak.
Well, that's right. It's paid out. So you and I, effectively, in our taxes, are paying for public sector pensions, because it's the general taxation pot which is used, if you like, in order to pay those pensions. There's not actually a separate fund of money which is invested on the stock market or in bonds or anything like that. It is, if you like, a figure on a piece of paper rather than an actual load of money shoved in a bank vault.
Well, really interesting insight, Jennie. Thank you ever so much for explaining the basics in all of this. Jennie Kreser, partner and head of pensions at Silverman, Sherliker.